Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Adam Interviews, where we continue to talk to some of the more interesting characters and inspirers in our community. And today, I'm finally getting to a gentleman that I've been trying to interview. He's been on my list. You might not know that, but he has been on my list of people to talk to for many years now, especially as we get towards the end of baseball season. His name comes to mind, and you may recognize him because you may have seen it in the byline of many a story that you've read on the Democrat and Chronicle website, in the paper. Sean Lahman has been an institution in the journalism world for many, many years. And I do want to talk about his journalism, but one of the reasons that we're bringing him in here now is to talk about something that not many people know you did, Sean. Well, first, let me just say thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Glad to be here, Adam. Always nice to see your face in person. I don't get to see in person too much, but I see it on TV all the time.
I appreciate that. So, the Lahman Baseball Database, you started in 1996.
Yep.
And you saw the power of data and the internet.
Sure.
How are you not a billionaire by now? I mean, you saw everything.
Yeah. Well, you know, one of the things I got involved in baseball analysis. We call it sabermetrics now. In the mid to late 80s, and one of the challenges at the time was if you wanted to do any kind of research, you had to build your own data set. And so as the internet came around, I saw an opportunity to share that data with other researchers. One of the things I realized is I was a lot better at compiling and organizing data than I was in trying to do some kind of wizardry and extract meaningful information out of it.
Oh, that's interesting. How did that discovery happen?
Well, I tried my hand at that kind of analysis. The math was pretty complicated for me in those days, some of the kinds of things that people were really doing. But to me, I really felt like there were smarter people than me out there. There were more insightful people than me, people who were much better at math than me. And in order for them to do any kind of research at that time, as I said, you couldn't just go and download this information. You had to build it from scratch. I had done that starting when I was in college by going through the baseball encyclopedia and typing up little spreadsheets, and it made sense to me to share that publicly, which I think has helped the baseball community, but that's why I'm not a billionaire.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the sharing it, which I'm grateful for, and I have questions about your sanity. But what inspired you to get into baseball? I mean, obviously you're in college, and you are literally going page by page through the baseball encyclopedia. Where did that passion come from?
Well, I was always a baseball fan. As a kid, I lived in Cincinnati in the mid-'70s, and the Reds at that time were a dynasty, and so it was almost required by law that every school kid become a Reds fan. That's where I got interested in it. And then when I was a little older in high school, I started reading the books of Bill James, which were really a call that said to me, not only are there other people like me who are passionate and who think deeply about the game, but there's the conventional wisdom that we've been told about how the game works and how to win. Bill James argued that nobody knows what they're doing in baseball. The math doesn't match what they've been saying and doing and how they've been running their teams. And so, as a teenager, there's a kind of rebelliousness to that, and I guess anti-establishment. That kind of work is always really popular when you're a teenager. But then when I got into college, I got connected to I went to the University of Cincinnati, which was a big research library at the time. And this was in the late 80s, before anybody really was on the internet. The World Wide Web didn't exist yet. But if you were at a university or if you worked for a big research corporation, there was suddenly this way to connect with other people. And many of us who had this interest in baseball found each other there in the late 80s and early 90s.
It seems like whenever I hear about success stories, and mind you, I think yours is a success story. It's a matter of your passion meeting the perfect place and time, and it seemed like all of that was happening at the right time.
It was, and this was the dawn for me. We didn't have computers when I graduated high school in '86, but when I got to college, I had access to computers. I had to learn some programming for my studies, and that I saw. Obviously, my mind was obsessed with baseball, and when I was in classes learning about databases and things like that, my mind was on how I could use that to further my knowledge of the game.
Did you know at the time that people would be able to use that for cross-referencing and things like that to create different stats and everything?
No, I had no idea about that at the time. We didn't have fantasy baseball was just starting, and so there was an appetite that hadn't been there before for more information about baseball, and certainly data was part of that. But I didn't start by saying I'm going to build this database of baseball stats for everybody to use. I just started doing it for my own use, and little by little became a big thing, and a lot of people were very happy to have it.
Why not stick to that? Because we're going to talk about your venture into journalism, which lasted years, and we benefited from that investment of time on your end. But why not stick to this for your career?
That's a good question. I'm not sure there was a way to make money at this at the time in the early 90s or even into the mid 90s. There were some people that I worked with who did find a way to do that. Sean Foreman is a name you may know, who created the Baseball Reference website, now a whole family of sports reference websites, and he's made a business out of that. But I think at the time there really wasn't those kinds of opportunities. There certainly weren't jobs within baseball for this kind of analysis. Now teams have whole crews of kids out of MIT and Stanford who are crunching numbers. But at the time, it seemed more like an avocation than a profession, and I was happy to do that. I could do that, in my spare time.
Was it monotonous, plugging in numbers? Once you got a system, it was kind of easy using?
Well, yeah, at first I was, it was pretty monotonous, to be honest with you, typing in numbers from the Baseball Encyclopedia. But as you start to do that kind of gathering, you come up with better strategies, and the technology improves. By the early 90s, with the advent of computers and scanners, there were other ways to get that data and to put it in. But there's also an element too of it. As I said, I don't think you could start out saying I'm going to do this because it's such a massive project. I think about like the Google Maps, the Street View thing they did. I'm not sure that somebody said we're going to take trillions of pictures and we're going to drive every road of the globe, but that's what they ended up doing, and it doesn't often start with that end in mind. At least that was the case for me.
What drew you then? In a way, is data and your passion for that linked to your journalism career?
It really is. I got into the newspaper business relatively late. I had been working as an encyclopedia editor. I was editing the Baseball Encyclopedia and other sports reference books, which people under 30 probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But we used to put out all of this statistical information on printed pages, these 8-pound books, 2,500 pages. We would update them every year, and people would buy them. But I was doing that at the time, and had an opportunity to do some writing for one of the New York papers as a columnist. Kind of, here's some interesting anecdotes from the editor of the Baseball Encyclopedia. And so I did. That's how I got my foot in the door. I did some sports reporting for a while, and I had always had a romanticism for the newspaper business. And once I got to see what that was like, I caught the bug, and sports is fun as a fan, but it's nights and weekends if it's your job, and it's, I found not as much fun to be at the ballpark if you're on a deadline and thinking about stories and doing that every night of a baseball season, that's a long thing. So I had an opportunity to join the DNC in 2010. They were looking for a database specialist who could also write a little bit, and that turned out to be a perfect situation for me to kind of bring those two skills together.
You know, it's funny. I obviously didn't know anything about this transition kind of to reporting. I knew about your reporting, and I knew about the database, but the convergence is really interesting to me, and it kind of runs a little parallel. When I went to Syracuse, WAER is the NPR station that's embedded into the school, and they're the ones that give the internships, basically free jobs. To we work for free, and there was an orientation meeting for sports and news, and so I walked through the news department, said hi to everyone. I went back to sports, and I got to talking with everybody, and they're talking about, oh, when Gretzky did this, and in 1979, this volleyball player did, and like the trivia that they knew was so beyond anything. I'm just a baseball fan, like I could tell you anything about the Yankees, but beyond that. And so two things occurred to me. One, I don't know nearly as much as they do, and two, I don't care to.
Well, I will confess, even though I've been an encyclopedia editor and worked on this database, I do not have a photographic memory or recall for dates and figures. Some key moments I may remember personally, but and there are folks like that, and I just don't have that gift.
Yeah. No. So when Moneyball came out, what was your reaction to that?
It was really interesting because when I first got interested in baseball analytics, everybody who was doing that were outsiders. And there was kind of a railing against the establishment, just getting them to understand that there is a science that underlies the game and that there is value into analyzing data. And when Moneyball came out, to me, that was a reflection of the fact that at least some teams had acknowledged that. And the story of what the Oakland A's did got a lot of attention, but there were other teams who were doing similar things at the time. I was shocked that that this outsider view had kind of found a foot in the door and in fact was having some success. The fact that some of those people who were in that community of sabermetrics, the fact that many of them were starting to get work in baseball, that was very encouraging to me. And at that time, which we're talking about 20 years ago now, at that time it surprised me. It was something I didn't think would ever happen, but I certainly didn't see the snowball effect that we would go from this Moneyball era to where we are now, which is, data runs everything.
Do you kind of wish you could go back in time and tell your 1996 self that this is where it was going?
Well, I could go back and tell myself to buy Google stock as well.
That's true, but you weren't inside Google. You had an inside track on this one.
No, I mean, I'm happy because, I enjoy that aspect of the game. I'm a numbers guy. I'm a data guy, and I'm just glad to see that the way the game has changed. I know a lot of people are not happy, and a lot of people don't like what's happened to the game and the impact that sabermetrics has had. They would like things to be the same as they were 40 years ago. That's fine. People say that about other sports as well. But I'm thrilled with where we are today.
The only thing I want changed is I want the runner on second immediately put there and the extra innings taken out. Everything else I'm fine with. Even the robotic umpires, but I can't stand the 10th inning. Someone's on second base.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I was I think when I was younger, I was more of a traditionalist, but some of the changes, like having the designated hitter, I'm fine with that now. The pitch clock really hasn't hurt things. I think it's helped things.
I'm a convert on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So it must have felt a little validating when the sabermetrics started to take over, because even though you say in the 90s you didn't necessarily see exactly where it was going to go, you knew that there was an importance to it.
I think everybody understood that understanding the data, analyzing the data could give you a competitive advantage. And ultimately, these teams are in business, and if they do better, they make more money. And I think we all understood that greed, for lack of a better word, that thirst for financial success was ultimately going to be what made this become universal, which is where we are today.
So for those of you who don't know, sabermetrics stands for Society for American Baseball Research. And Sean, you work for them, and then you gave them the database.
Yes.
Wow. You got to explain that one to me.
Well, I don't work for Sabre anymore.
Excuse me.
I've worked as a consultant for them for almost 15 years, but my time doing that was coming to an end, and I was thinking about how important it was to me that this database have a life beyond me, because people are still using it. When I started putting this out, it's been almost 30 years now. I just assumed that at some point MLB or somebody else would do this. I did not imagine I would be doing this as long as I have, but that's not the case. And so my decision to donate the database to Sabre was just, like an old art collector who wants to make sure the Van Goghs are going to be well preserved. I wanted to have an institution that could take over it and make sure it would live beyond me. So,
and I think it will, not just in the back rooms of the internet, John, but I think you look at these video games. Yep. You look at not just back rooms of the internet, and not just in the back rooms of baseball teams. I mean, kids who are enjoying baseball are using your database.
Yeah.
They just don't even know it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's cool. And, I think the whole idea is that understanding the numbers by themselves give you an understanding of what's happening in the game and maybe help you to understand a little better. And for me, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Because I just like kind of jumping back and forth here. Going back to your DNC days, any particular stories stand out to you that you really had to dig into and the numbers surprised you, or you were able to really reveal something in the community based on the data?
Well, unfortunately, one of the stories I spent a lot of time on was the sexual abuse of kids by priests and Boy Scout leaders. We started building a database of those cases. Typically, we would report on a scout leader who got arrested or a lawsuit that got filed, but there was no real aggregation to help understand how often this was happening. And so we started doing that. I started building a database of all those cases from court records and so forth. And it was kind of disturbing to see how much of that was going on in the community. And I think we've had a reckoning on that, certainly with the passage of the Child Victims Act a few years ago and an opportunity for people to do that. But that was one that I think the data really gave some insight to.
And what do you think about the recent settlements that have stemmed from that?
I was surprised at how long the bankruptcy case took for the Diocese of Rochester. I think over 5 years. I've talked to a lot of victims. Some of these victims have died since they started this process.
Wow.
I'm glad that there's some resolution to it. I think some people are still not happy about it, but I'm glad we've had an opportunity to put those things out in the open.
Absolutely. Now that I think you left the DNC about 2 years ago,
right.
Thoughts on just our industry? I know print and TV there's always been a wall, but it's kind of all falling down now. It's,
I'm disappointed in what's happened to the news business. You and I were talking a little earlier. I'm thrilled that I got a chance to work in a vibrant newsroom at the DNC. When I started there in 2010, there were over 100 reporters there. There's nothing like being in a newsroom when breaking news is happening. There's nothing like the adrenaline rush of going out to a fire or a car crash or something like that, political scandal that's unfolding. We've had a lot of that. I'm glad that I've been able to be a witness to that for the community and to be at some of those things. The business is tough. My hat is off to young folks who still want to go into it. It's tough in print. It's tough in TV. It's tough in radio, as we saw this week. I think, it's tough. And my hats are off to folks like you who are still doing it. The news is still vitally important. We need to know what's going on in our community. A lot of our friends and neighbors have disengaged from news, and I don't think that's to our benefit.
No, absolutely. And as for me, I mean, it's a simple reason. I don't have an outside skill set. So this is all I know how to do. So I'm going, if the ship is going down, which hopefully it isn't, I'm going down with it. So back to baseball here. My son posed an interesting question to me. I know it's posed all the time, but he's 13, and he always told people that Babe Ruth was the best baseball player to ever live, or one of them. Yeah. True Yankees fan, I always told him you can be whatever political party you want, religion, but you have to be a Yankees fan. And one of his friends is like, no way, it was a different game. It's harder now. They're throwing faster, all that. And, my response was, well, it's different. But then again, the balls were looser. The bats were not as well made. Yeah. It's almost impossible to compare. And he goes, well, would Babe Ruth be good in today's game? And just from you looking at numbers and things like that, I'd love to get your I know it's hypothetical, but what's your take on that?
I think Babe Ruth is the greatest baseball player of all time. He was a great pitcher. He was a great hitter. I think you have to look at those questions in the context of the era. So much is different now. Players are better. They're more physically fit. They have better nutrition. They have better health care. These guys used to ride the train from city to city, which can have been a lot of fun. I think that when you look at those kinds of questions of historical comparisons, I think you have to look at how dominant was a player in his era. And Babe Ruth was 5 times better than anybody else who was playing at the time. The year he hit 60 home runs, I don't think anybody else hit 25.
Wow, that's incredible. I didn't know that.
Don't quote me on that. But,
I won't.
But he was so much better. And, it's harder to have that kind of edge in any of the sports today because, kids start playing at a younger age. They have better coaching. But we have not seen a player in baseball as dominant as Babe Ruth was. Certainly not since maybe the days of Willie Mays or some of those guys. It's just a different game today.
That's such an interesting point. And going back to the data aspect of it, when you really started to compile data, that was the height or on the way to being the height of the PED, performance-enhancing drug scandal, and the doping. And so, someone once said, like, Mike Mussina should be in the Hall of Fame, but he won't be because his numbers aren't as good, but he was going up against monsters. What are your thoughts putting asterisks next to names and numbers and things like that from the late 90s, early 2000s?
I'm not a fan of asterisks. Again, I think you need to look at the context of the times. A lot of players were doping, we believe. We don't know for sure. I think we can suspect, just based on what we saw from just the not natural physiques that were omnipresent for a couple of years. We have guys who were dominating in their early 40s, which, typically doesn't happen without some kind of help. I think we have to, fair or not, just our judgment has to be based on what happened on the field. Barry Bonds, hit all those home runs, whether he had help or not. He actually did it. Say the same thing about all those players. When it comes to the Hall of Fame, part of the discussion is about players' character. And I think what we've seen so far is most of the writers who have a vote have said we're not putting any of those guys in. Barry Bonds, Alex Rodriguez, Manny Ramirez, all those guys are clearly Hall of Famers. Roger Clemens. But the judgment of folks now is that we so dislike what you did with the PEDs, we're not going to put you in.
Yeah. Your role with the databases, did it ever take you into any circles, parties? I mean, did you ever kind of rub shoulders with a lot of the folks making decisions in the baseball community?
Not so much. Well, I shouldn't say that. The folks that I know in the baseball community are the data nerds. But we're kindred spirits in that respect. But in terms of famous people, not really. I've gotten to go to some cocktail parties at the Hall of Fame a few times, and that was a lot of fun as a fan. But no.
Yeah. How fun was it? I don't know if you saw, but Denny Wright threw out the first pitch for the Cincinnati Reds
that was
game.
Fantastic, yeah.
Did that surprise you? Did you know that was happening?
I did not until it happened, and I didn't know he was a Reds fan. I've met him a couple of times, so next time I see him, we'll have something new to talk about.
Yeah, he and I give each other a bit of grief on that one, but what can you do? Now, so what's next for you? What can we expect?
Well, I'm working in communications now since I left the paper. I'm working on a new book that has nothing to do with baseball. It's probably going to come out next year. It's about Vincent van Gogh. Here's a bit of data for you. There are 127 Van Gogh paintings in the United States, and probably half of those are close enough that we could get in a car right now and go see him before the museum closed.
Oh my goodness.
So
how did you come upon this?
A couple of years ago, I went to Buffalo. They have a nice art museum up there. I was on a day trip with my wife, and as you do, you walk through the museum and you look at each painting one after the other, and I found myself standing in front of a Van Gogh painting, and it was quite remarkable. I'd seen them before, but it just struck me when I was standing there, and I thought, I didn't know that there was a Van Gogh painting here just, an hour from my house. So what do? I built a spreadsheet with all of the Van Gogh paintings, and it really struck me because, I'd been to museums in New York and the National Gallery in D.C., but it hadn't really imprinted me the way that painting did that day. So I'm on a quest to see all of them, and I'm writing a book about the experience and also to evangelize to other people, to you, Adam.
Yeah.
Go see Van Gogh paintings in person. It's remarkable.
Oh, please. It's funny when you said that. I had the great fortune of seeing one in Amsterdam. Yeah. And same exact experience. It was just one. I enjoyed all of it, but one painting in particular, it was straw bales. And then in the beautiful blue sky, but in the horizon, there's a line of dark clouds. And I don't know what it was about it, but I almost started crying. It was just beautiful.
For me, a profound experience to see his paintings in person. The brush strokes, the colors don't really get captured if you do a Google search. If you go and see Starry Night in person, it's going to shock you compared to what you've seen on your phone.
Oh, this is so cool. So, all right, well, we're going to keep, no pun intended, an ear to the ground on that one.
All right.
Sorry. I had to go there. But
one ear.
Yeah. Where can people follow, your travails?
I'm on Twitter, SeanLahman.com, or I've got VanGoghinAmerica.com.
Ooh, okay.
Not a lot there now, but you can check it out. The spreadsheet of Van Gogh paintings is there. You can download it.
All right.
Giving it away for free.
It's your MO. It's your MO. Sean, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this conversation. All right. Sean Lahman, everybody. I bet you didn't know that. You might have been a fan of his, the DNC like I was, and then you find out he's got this backstory. He's like the Batman of database. So there we go. And I look forward to learning more about Van Gogh and where I can see his work in person. Again, just an example of the stuff that we are doing here in the Adam Interviews segment, and I hope that you continue to enjoy them as you have been. And with that, I'm going to wish you a very healthy and fun weekend, and we hope to see you back here next week. All right, take care, everyone.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.